Let's preview the ACC. We do so with one of our favorites from the ACC network, is the former Georgia Tech running back, and that, of course, is Roddy Jones, kind enough to join us right now. Roddy, appreciate the time as always. How you been?
Yeah, Zach, I'm good, man. Appreciate you having me.
All righty, so let me start you off with Clemson. You know, the last few years, I just looked at Clemson, and I know that they've had Florida State win the ACC. You also had Pitt win the ACC, and then Clemson has done so as well. But their standard has fallen where I used to expect them to compete for a national championship in the last 3 to 4 years. It's just win the ACC, and then that was pretty much it for their season. I have high expectations for Clemson this year. I'm a big believer once again in Dabo Swinney. I think Cade Klubnik is a really good quarterback. I view them, Roddy, as a team where it's national championship or bust. What's your view of the Tigers?
Yeah, I think national championship or bust is a little unfair for any team in this current era of college football. I mean, you're talking about having to win at least the first playoff game, the quarterfinal, the semifinal, and then the national championship game. It's just a lot to ask for any team, especially when you get to the semifinal and you're playing coin flip games essentially, unless you're Ohio State, just rolling people. I think the expectation though should be this team should win the ACC. This team should get to the college football playoff, probably with a bye, and it should win a game. So I think semifinal is certainly a reasonable expectation for Clemson. Once you get to the semifinal, like, you're going to play a great team. You're going to have things go your way. But I think this is a Clemson team that's as good a team from that school as we've seen since probably 2019, Trevor Lawrence and that crew. Like, you've got the quarterback in Cade Klubnik. You've got incredible receivers with Bryant Wesco and Antonio Williams and TJ Moore, and they bring in a transfer in Tristan Smith. They get Tyler Brown back, who was their leading receiver a couple of years ago before getting hurt last year. You've got a crew on defense that features Peter Woods, defensive tackle that many think should be in the conversation to be the number one defensive tackle taken in next year's NFL draft. TJ Parker, who is, garnering the odds to be the number one overall pick as the defensive end, could be the first defensive end off of the board in next year's NFL draft. You've got a linebacker room that I think is really underrated in 2 NFL corners. This is a Clemson team where the expectation should be sky high. Dabo Swinney has done a great job of just constantly evaluating this program, and it doesn't happen as quickly as some people would like, which is frustrating because, when we are in charge of organizations, or not we, I've never been in charge of an organization, but when you're in charge of a family, when you're in charge of anything, taking a measured approach to how you change and how you develop is reasonable. And I think that we got impatient with Dabo Swinney at a time when the landscape of college football changed in a way that Clemson not wasn't equipped to deal with, but it was a larger switch for Clemson, I think, than a lot of other schools because of the way the program is run, the culture, the way they recruit and develop, and the way that Dabo Swinney wants to reward the people that are loyal to him and grow up in his system. But he has made those changes. They took 3 transfers, including Will Helt from Purdue, who should be a really good addition to that defensive line. They changed the defensive coordinator after promoting internally with Wes Goodwin coming in. They fired him in the offseason and bring in Tom Allen, who's going to be phenomenal as the defensive coordinator. Was great last year at Penn State. They brought in Garrett Riley a few years ago. They whiffed on DJ Uiagalelei, but developed Cade Klubnik. So I really think this Clemson team is in the program is just in a really healthy place. And I do think the expectations for them should be to be a national contender.
Roddy Jones here with us. When we get to UNC, I think, the 2 biggest stories in this conference as we get set to embark on the ACC, it's Clemson and their quest to win another national championship, and then it's what the hell is Bill Belichick going to look like year 1 at Chapel Hill. I was talking about it earlier. I think the line for success for me, if they go 8-4, I think people will look at UNC and say that's a heck of a job for Bill Belichick in year number 1. What are your expectations for the Tar Heels?
It's a great question. I don't really know what the expectations should be because of the team, but you look at the schedule, and I think the expectation should be 8-4 or better. This is a team who, from a schedule standpoint, they miss a large chunk of the top portion of the league. They do play Clemson, but outside of that, they don't play Miami. They don't play Louisville. They don't play Georgia Tech. They don't play most of the better teams in the league. Now, they do get an NC State who could be a really good team. They do get a Duke who could be a really good team and probably should be. I mean, Duke won 9 games last year, so they should be good as well. But in terms of games that you look on paper and you're like, yeah, North Carolina's overmatched, there's not a whole lot of those. So there's really only one. And so I do think the expectation should be to be not only in a bowl game, but solidly in a bowl game, 7, 8, 9 wins. And then in terms of what could happen past that, I think you look at a ceiling, and the ceiling is probably 10. Now, I don't know if they reach it, Zach, because I don't know what to make of this roster. I really don't. Now, they bring in a ton of guys that played on the offensive line, but how does that gel together? What are they going to look like offensively? Steve Belichick, his son, did a good job with Washington's defense last year. Do they have the pieces to do that at UNC? Just so many questions that won't be answered until they kick it off on Labor Day night against TCU. And look, TCU's a team with more answers, and they got Josh Hoover at quarterback, who's a really good player, was the second leading passer in the Big 12 last year. So if there's holes on that defense, Josh Hoover's going to find them. So it may not go great for them on Labor Day night, but you would imagine the coaching acumen of that staff, not just Bill Belichick, but that staff with Freddie Kitchens as the offensive coordinator, like that team should develop and should get better and should get coached up. And so I do think those are reasonable expectations to be like, hey, look, especially with that schedule, 8 wins should be about the floor.
Do you think that Bill Belichick, this is his last stop in his illustrious coaching career? Do you think this, however it goes at UNC, that's it?
No, I think if I'm being completely honest, I don't think this is his last. I don't think he wants it to be his last stop. Now, whether the NFL, because I think that's what he would leave for, whether the NFL dictates that it's his last stop, and I don't know, I can't predict, but I think if he had it his way, he would get back to the NFL and he would chase the all-time wins record.
Roddy Jones here with us. All right, how about SMU? Last year, an unbelievable story, really fun watch. What do you make of the Mustangs going into this season?
They're going to be good again on offense. I'll tell you that. Kevin Jennings is one of the stars of the league at quarterback, and his performance against Penn State in the first half aside, like, this is a guy that played really well throughout most of the year. The Duke game, he had a little bit of a lull of a game. In the beginning of the ACC championship game, didn't play great, but was phenomenal in the last 3 quarters of that game. So Kevin Jennings is one of the stars of the league. They've got a weapon back in RJ Maryland, who got hurt last year at the tight end position, sort of a flex tight end that could be a matchup problem for teams, is the way they move him around. And then the offensive line will be really good again. So I'm excited about SMU. They've got some questions defensively, and we focus so much on the offense because the offense is always good for SMU. The thing is, when they have done their best work recently, both 2 years ago when they won the American and last year where they went to the ACC championship game, they have played championship level defense. Statistically, SMU had the best defense in the ACC last year. They are going to have to recreate that despite losing a lot on the defensive front and at linebacker, but they've got really good safeties. They've really improved the corner position. So I think the back part of that defense, the defensive backfield, could be a lot better this year, which can help cover up for some of the step back that you're going to take on that defensive line. But I think SMU will be really good. The schedule's a lot tougher, though. They play Clemson and Miami in the regular season. They get Louisville as well. So the win total may not be quite what it was last year. The non-conference, they play TCU, they play Baylor, 2 teams that are expected to compete in the Big 12. So, this could be an SMU team that's 8-4, 9-3, and be just as good as they were last year. Just the schedule, is a little bit tougher. So I'm excited about SMU. I think long-term, if you're going to buy stock, you're buying it in SMU. This year, win total wise, I think you're probably saying they're going to take a step back just because there's really nowhere to go but up. There's really not a lot of room to go up from 11-1 last year in the regular season. But ultimately, you look at this SMU team, and I think they should be very good again.
Roddy Jones here with us for a few more moments. Another team that had an unbelievable season last year, and we're just trying to figure out what they're going to be this year. I've known Fran Brown for a long time, being someone that graduated for Temple and covered that football team, and I loved his personality, and it's really cool to see what he did last year at Syracuse. But what do you think your number 2 has in store for the Orange?
Yeah, this is a team that I think long-term you're definitely buying in Fran Brown, and you're buying into the Syracuse program. I think this year is going to be a little bit of a struggle for them. The schedule flips on them, so they get a bunch of the really talented teams in the ACC, including Clemson and Miami. So the schedule's a lot tougher. You look, they open with Tennessee as well. So those are going to be challenging games for a team that has a lot of questions to answer. They got to figure out the quarterback position. Is it going to be Steve Angeli? Is it going to be Ricky Collins? They got to replace their running back, receivers, their leading receiver, their leading tight end. So there's just a lot of holes that they're going to have to fill with a tougher schedule, with quarterback questions, two guys that are unproven at this level. So I do think it's going to be a step back year for Syracuse. I think in the long term, they'll get that roster to a point where they can be pretty consistently an 8 to 10 win team. That may take a couple more years, but I think in the short term this year, like if Syracuse makes a bowl game, it's a pretty good coaching job. And if they're at 7 or 8 wins, it's a hell of a coaching job by a guy who I really like in Fran Brown. I think long term, Syracuse has found the right guy.
Also, I want to get your thoughts here on Carson Beck. Obviously everyone remembers Jalen Hurts when he was at Alabama, then got benched at halftime of the national championship game. He did stick around for another year before going to Oklahoma. Can Carson Beck kind of do what Jalen Hurts kind of did at Oklahoma and have that redemption story when almost everyone was writing him off and counting him out?
Yeah, I think health is going to be a big question. Like, he's still getting back to a regular throwing program with that elbow injury that he suffered. He had surgery on in the offseason, throwing that Hail Mary during the second half or at the end of the first half of the conference championship game against Alabama. Against Texas. I think that that's going to be a big question. He talked to him today. He's very confident. He likes where he's at. He thinks he's on track to be just fine. But I think the thing about Carson Beck that struck me today, and I didn't talk to him on camera at all, this was purely off camera, I think he's comfortable. And I'm not sure how comfortable he was being the quarterback of the University of Georgia because of, sometimes personality and program situation just don't fit. He is a guy that has been very public about what kind of car he likes to drive. He drives a Lamborghini or drove a Lamborghini. I don't know if he's still driving it, but he drives nice cars. He wears nice jewelry. He, obviously was dating a social media influencer and one of the Cavenders. If you do that in Athens, Georgia, like the spotlight is on you constantly. You're living in a fishbowl. You do that in Miami, and nobody cares.
One of our own.
Everybody's driving a Lamborghini. Everybody's dating an influencer. So I think he is comfortable in his anonymity. As flashy as these college athletes get to live now, you can do that and be anonymous in Miami. So I think he is comfortable in that. He's really comfortable in the offense with Shannon Dawson as the offensive coordinator. And that offensive line is going to be really good. Questions are at receiver. But Miami is going to be good this year, and I think Carson Beck will really show he is a good player. And people wrote him off last year because he did have some struggles, too many interceptions at times. He didn't get a lot of help from his receivers. But Carson Beck's a really good player. The floor there is really, really high, and the ceiling is through the roof for a guy with that level of talent.
Let me get your thoughts on Florida State. We know the quarterback already said some big things with their week 1 matchup up against the Alabama Crimson Tide 2 years ago. Florida State went undefeated in the regular season and also won the ACC that had the unfortunate stubbing out of the college football playoff because of the quarterback injury. Last year was a disaster. They only won 2 games. Does Mike Norvell have a big bounce back season, or are Florida State fans at the end of the year saying, what do we have here with this football program?
If it's the latter, it's not good for Florida State, Mike Norvell, or the league. So I am more bullish on Florida State certainly than I was coming into last year. Florida State came in ranked in the top 10 last year, and I was not bullish on them at all. There were so many questions because they brought in a bunch of transfers that had hype, but not much production. This year, most of the guys that they're going to count on have some level of production to back it up. Thomas Castellanos, we've seen him play, and whether you like or don't like his game, he's played in the ACC, and he's played a decent amount of ball in the ACC. So there's things to work with there. Deuce Robinson produced last year as a true freshman at USC. Squirrel White, while he had a down year last year and struggled with drops at times, 2 years ago was phenomenal for Tennessee. And so can you have him regain that form? Gavin Blackwell at receiver has been productive at UNC as sort of an auxiliary piece. And then you look at the defensive side of the football, and again, they bring in a couple of guys that have been productive, albeit at smaller schools, but they've been productive. Whereas last year they brought in guys with like star rankings out of high school. school, but hadn't produced at a Georgia or at Alabama, at some of these other places. So I do feel better about them. The schedule sets up pretty well for them. It doesn't seem to be super daunting, although in the ACC there's always surprises. So I think Florida State should bounce back. The question is, what does that look like? I mean, there's 4 games on the schedule walking in where on paper Florida State is not better than the other team. You look at the Alabama game to start, Clemson, Miami, and then Florida at the end of the year. So I tend to think the ceiling's probably like 8-4. But I think the floor shouldn't be lower than 7-5. Because if they're 6-6, I think they're looking around asking questions.
How about your guy, Haynes King? I had him on a few weeks ago. The dude's a warrior. He's maybe one of the toughest players in college football. Georgia Tech, your program moving in the right direction.
They are. I love the way Brett Key has really put his stamp on this program and is a running football team that's going to be physical on both lines of scrimmage. And so I'm really excited about the Jackets this year. I keep talking schedule, but schedule for Georgia Tech seems to set up pretty well. They get Georgia and Clemson every other game. You look at it and you're like, yeah, Georgia Tech's got a chance to win that game.
You don't think my Temple Owls are going to beat Georgia Tech?
I mean, look, Zach, I certainly respect the Temple Owls. But if Georgia Tech's worried about Temple, we got bigger fish to fry. Like we got bigger problems. But I do love what Temple is trying to get going there. So I think that this Georgia Tech team, Haynes King returning at quarterback, Jamal Haynes returning at running back, Eric Rivers coming over from FIU, explosive receiver, that offensive line that is slowly developed over the course of years, led by Keelan Rutledge, should be really good. Kyle Eifert on the defense, and the neck roll and the face paint and the toughness that he has. I just think this is a tough, bloodier-nosed football team that's going to have some explosiveness with Malik Rutherford and the aforementioned Eric Rivers. And then Blake Gideon comes in on the defensive side, coming over from Texas as the defensive coordinator. I cannot wait to see how he puts his stamp on this Georgia Tech team, because if they can create more pressure on the quarterback, then I think this defense takes the next step. So I'm really excited. The ceiling for Georgia Tech this year, who knows if they reach it, but I think it's 10-2. And if you're 10-2,
wow, you
are in the college football playoff conversation. And if past trends hold, 10 wins get you in the college football playoff. My thing is to all these SEC teams that are saying, hey, look at strength of schedule, look at the win 10 and you are in. That's the way that I look at it, because the way that the rankings have played out since they started the college football playoff rankings, if you go back and sort of reverse engineer what a 12-team playoff would look like, more often than not, and drastically more often than not, a 10-win team is in the college football playoff almost no matter what, because by the end of the year, there's not a ton of them sitting around there. So I think that is a ceiling for Georgia Tech. I think realistically, you're looking at a team that should be 8-4 and competing towards the top of the league, maybe not with Miami, Clemson, but I think they should be, or SMU, but I think they should be kind of right after that tier.
Yeah, just don't lose to my Owls like you guys did in 2019 when you guys lost 24-2.
Hey, look,
just saying.
I was about to say, man, like you didn't have to bring up the loss because it's happened in recent memory. It still hurts my heart. There was a loss to Northern Illinois in there as well. Which
Roddy, can I be honest with you? I knew
Absolutely.
that they beat Georgia Tech, but I'm looking on. I'm like, what year was that? And the fact that I had to scroll all the way back to 2019, man. That's a long time ago now.
It was and it wasn't. But yes, it feels like just yesterday. The burn still burns.
All right, last thing I'll ask you. We know Clemson's the best team on paper. Who's the second best team in the ACC? And then give me a team that you think people are sleeping on in the ACC entering this season.
Miami's the second best team. And then I think SMU is really close behind them. In terms of a sleeper team, it depends on the definition. Like a team that could contend for the top of the league, Louisville should be really good, especially offensively. Defensively, there's some questions, but Louisville should be really good offensively. And I think that Louisville offense could be good enough if Miller Moss gets back to the form that we saw a couple years ago in the bowl game. The offense could be good enough to carry them through some defensive struggles early on. In terms of like real sleeper that nobody's talking about, they're not going to make noise at the top of the league. But in terms of improvement, I'll give you two. I think you can look at Pitt. Pitt started 7-0 last year, lost their last 6 games. I think this is a Pitt team that could be a lot better than it was a year ago, where they kind of fell off a cliff because of injuries at quarterback and depth issues down the stretch. But I think Virginia will be a lot better this year. Nobody's counting on them or nobody's counting on them to make noise in the conference. And I'm not saying they're going to contend at the top of the league, but I think you're going to look up at the end of the year and Virginia could be a, 7. 8's probably a little rich, but could be a 7-win team. We'll look up and say, hey, look, Tony Elliott did a really good job because they have been building that thing for a number of years. They've got a quarterback in Chandler Morris who threw for over 3,000 yards last year at North Texas, has Power 5 experience. So I think those three teams, people aren't talking about, and sort of at different tiers of the ACC will outkick what people are expecting of them.
He is Roddy Jones. Does a great job for the ACC Network. Roddy, appreciate the time as always. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. Appreciate it.